So Judge Judy recently had on a couple of people regarding a burial insurance company called Lumico not paying out its death claim. And I figured as somebody who is an experienced burial insurance agent, I could come on and do a reaction to what's going on in the television show and to give you more insight on what the problems are and potentially how you can avoid these issues, and as well as how to stay informed. Because if you're getting a burial insurance policy, you need to be aware of what could happen when you or your loved one dies. And so my hope is this video will give you a lot of clarification and perspective. My name is David Duford. I own Buy Life Insurance for Burial. We help people across the nation with their burial insurance needs by shopping the most popular products and even some of the ones you don't or never have heard of to give you the best combination of price and coverage. If you're interested in burial insurance, you want a free quote, best way is to call us at 888-626-0439, or you can just mosey on over to my website at buylifeinsuranceforburial.com. Now let's take it away and review this Judge Judy clip. So before we get started, I want you to understand something a little bit about the production side of TV shows. Like what you see on TV as far as the finished product, the television show you're watching, is not necessarily exactly how it happened live. There are many instances where watching shows like this, you don't get the full and true perspective. The post-production of when the show is completed is sometimes altered entirely and completely different than how it actually laid out on the show from its origin. You'll kind of see this, and I'll remark on this as we go through this, because as somebody who's experienced dealing with burial insurance companies, there's things about this that doesn't seem quite right and sensible, and even some of the reactions from people in the audience. So please keep that in mind as we go through this, because my opinion and perspective in watching this is you're not really seeing exactly what happened from point A to point B. You're seeing some kind of convoluted post-production sort out that isn't necessarily clear on what exactly happened. So let's start from the beginning. At the end of this video, we'll play a part of another video that's on YouTube that continues where this left off. The quality of the sound is kind of bad, so we're going to try our best to improve it when we edit it. So just keep your heads up and minds up there.
Let's get on the phone. Do you have anything in writing from the insurance company after December 9th?
I do not.
So as best as I can tell, I've done some research here. The setup here is that the family on the left side, if you're as a viewer looking to the left side of the screen, they are essentially trying to collect on a burial insurance claim from a deceased father or husband. And I believe the lady on the right is the agent or somebody who is related to selling the policy. It's not quite sure, doesn't quite say. Some of the mannerisms of the agent are kind of silly. It doesn't even make sense. And I kind of wonder if that was kind of designed post-production to make her look bad, because it doesn't make any sense that she would be reacting the way she does, as you'll see in a minute. But so what Judge Judy's doing here is she's attempting to call the company on behalf of the insured to figure out what the holdup is on the claim and to get some answers for the insured or the beneficiary, really. So that this claim potentially could be paid. And I say potentially because we'll get into some of the details of why that may not be the case and why sometimes it drags on like this. Let's continue.
Cindy, this is Judge Judy Scheindlin. I'd like you to look up the following claim number. G as in George, 195. The insured was Harold Owens, O-W-E-N-S. Well, it's been under review for quite some time.
So you may be wondering, well, why, when you die and you're insured, would the policy need to be reviewed? So again, I'm going to take more of a neutral stance here to help you understand what happens when a loved one dies. So if you have a burial insurance plan, you may be in one of two situations where the claim doesn't get paid immediately. And I'll give you my perspective on what I think this is, because again, it's not very clear. The insured probably has what's called a simplified issue whole life plan from Lumico, the company in question. And he most likely was fully covered from the first date they took the plan out and then made the first payment. but likely the insured, Mr. Owens, passed away before the 2-year contestability provision was reached. So let me explain what that means. So this is not something that's unique to Lumico. This is what all insurance companies have. In fact, it's a protected mandate that's delivered by each state that you're in. And essentially what this means is that if you die as the insured within 2 years of taking a policy out, then the carrier has a state mandated by the government right to investigate that claim to ensure that the policy that was placed into force, meaning taken out, was actually legitimate, and the claims that were made by the insured were truthful and not misrepresented intentionally or not. Therefore, the claim should be paid or not. So in other words, what happens in the insurance system is that the idea behind insurance is to protect people, and it has to be a profitable investment for the company. They're not doing this pro bono. They have to make money off of the insurance process. And if they take on a bunch of people and insure them, who actually their health is something other than what they stated, whether it was intentional, they lied, or they just didn't remember something, and a policy gets issued, and a lot of people die within these first 2 years, what you see is a complete and total collapse of the insurance system. And so what insurance companies have to do is they have to measure and weigh between getting people fully covered on one hand, which is something they absolutely want to do. But on the other hand, they got to make sure that the claims that are pressed against them by the beneficiaries are legitimate, they're not fraudulent, there wasn't a situation where the insured misrepresented intentionally or not, so that the sanctity, or I guess you could say the sanctity, or the profitability of the system remains intact. Because if you don't have that, you have an insurance system that just collapses on itself and nobody gets anything. And that's kind of the thing to keep in mind here. So what is happening in this particular situation with Mr. Owens on Judge Judy is that he most likely has died, was fully covered, I would say, and the claim was filed, and now we're sitting around here months in and not getting anywhere with the process. And this is typical with a claims process post-insured. If you die within the first 2 years and you're fully covered, you'll be in a position where the insured has to prove by getting and gathering information from the doctors, medical records, past 10 years from all the doctors they went to send to the insurance company, because they're granted by the government the right to ensure that the claim should be paid out or shouldn't based off the information in there. And that process takes a very long time in many cases. I have seen situations where a gentleman I insured took 9 months with a particular company because there had to be some go back and forth between getting the paperwork filed from the doctors. I've seen it take as little as 3 months. And again, these are claims that were processed within 2 years of the policy being issued and the client insured. So it just depends on a number of factors. Also, if you go to the VA, that slows down things tremendously. But the point I want to press here is that Lumico is not the only ones that do this. And there's a back and forth process that can be greatly stalled. Certainly, potentially the company's to blame for this, but also by the insured. If they're not doing their job to find all this information, and yeah, it's a lot of work, I get it, then it's going to slow down the claims process, unfortunately. And then they are under pressure from a multitude of other claims that they're trying to file, investigate, determine if the policy should be paid out or not. So and then a limited number of staff as well. So you're faced with all these variables here that definitely aren't clear in many cases when you buy a policy, but they're just the reality that you have to deal with. So let's continue.
Well, there has to be an outside date. How long do you review a policy? Well, there's nothing outstanding for them to file up on. They haven't received anything from you for any information.
Right, and what Judge Judy is saying here is that they filed the information that they requested, but they're not getting any kind of follow-up. Now, to what degree and how long that's been, it's unclear here. This is why it's really important that you stay in front of these people, you stay in front of them, and it's a frustrating process, I get it, but you know, many times the squeaky wheel gets the grease or the oil, right? So you have to stay on top. If you're in this situation, you need to be following up weekly, making sure they received it. Be nice to these people. They'll want to help you out. They're in a position, an awkward position where they got to help you, but they also got to protect the interest of the company as well. So make sure that you follow up with them. Stay nice with them as much as you can. I know it's a very challenging time, but this is how you make sure that your case on your loved one who's passed away gets the most attention. is by making sure that you stay in front of them.
And before I contact the insurance department on their behalf, I have to know exactly what it is that's outstanding.
And the threat of contacting the insurance department, I'm not sure if that actually works or not in the insurance business. It might, but understand if they're in a position where they're rightfully waiting on information to come back and forth, your doctors or your loved one's doctors may be the ones that are slowing things down. Doctors are terribly slow in many cases getting information back to the insurance company. There's so many moving parts here. It's very frustrating, but you definitely want to be in a position to where, again, open communication, consistent communication, and being the one leading the charge is so important in this regard.
Well, then that's unfortunate for Lumico, because you have had this policy since Mr. Owens passed away in November. We're now entering February.
And so that's not a long time. It just isn't, unfortunately. It's you know, he died in November, probably got the claim and the death certificate in December, and there's some back and forth by November or January, February. Then at that position, that's pretty early on in the process. Now, I will say this: if there is a position to where your loved one dies, and you're in a position where you're outside of the 2-year contestability, like many people are, this is definitely getting a little bit on the lengthier side. You should have a payout fairly quickly. It should be fairly fast. It should be, I would say, after they confirm that your death certificate is received and it says from the county that the insured has actually died. That is another exception to what could be happening here. Do they have all that information? They shouldn't be dragging their feet at this point. We want to see a payout within several weeks after the death certificate has been filed, and that should be fairly quick. And again, you have to stay up on top of this stuff in order for it to be processed in a timely manner.
I understand what you're saying to me. I want you to understand that unless this family gets a satisfactory response, that Lumico is not going to be happy. Because what you're giving me is a rote answer. If you said to me, we have outstanding questions that we've posed to the family and they haven't responded, or if we've asked for medical records and we haven't gotten them yet, because the insured, I don't understand what that means.
Yeah, and what she's saying is true. If she didn't quite finish her sentence, I don't know if they cut her off or not here, but yes, if you're not getting that information and they've got everything they need, and if this is outside of contestability, you should get paid as quickly as possible. And again, you got to stay on top of them, doing exactly what Judge Judy is saying here. If you're in the middle of contestability in the first 2 years, same rules apply. You got to stay on top of this stuff, but it will drag out the payout period a lot longer.
That is a rote answer. Just a second. Did you, just listen to me, did you records that you asked for? So
they said, did you receive the medical records that you asked for? That doesn't mean if they did, so it sounds like it's in contestability. So it doesn't mean that they completed it necessarily. They're probably still potentially going to say they're still reviewing it, but there could be more stuff that pops up after the medical records received. So just keep, sometimes one door opens many others.
Just a second. Well, did you advise the family of the other reasons? So now you received the medical records. December 9th was the last communication they got from you, was December 9th. Don't tell me all you could. I would strongly urge you to put somebody on who can give me a more satisfactory answer. No, I want to talk to them now. Now, the letter that I have comes from Lumico Life Insurance with a post office box number. Do you have an address, a physical address where Lumico Life Insurance? What is the physical address of the main office of Lumico Life Insurance? I
don't even know why Judge Judy's asking about the physical address here, except to be difficult. I don't understand how this progresses the ball down the court. But again, this may be that kind of post-production stuff where they make this sound pretty tense and, you know, made perfectly for TV.
I'm not giving you my number. I want your address, your physical address of where your building is. Is that where your Research Drive? Go ahead. And that's the main office for Lumico. And what I'm telling you is that is an unsatisfactory answer. So thank you. Bye.
All right, so let's switch videos here. 1 second, and then audio may be a little goofy here, so bear with me.
Sorry, you can sit down.
All right.
Who took out this policy with Lumico?
My mama.
Miss Owens, would you stand up next to your daughter?
Yes, ma'am. The one I had originally, she didn't next.
I didn't ask you.
Now it's interesting that I don't know if y'all caught this. She said she took it out. You're not technically supposed to take out life insurance on a loved one without their consent. It makes me wonder if this even caused an issue with Lumico seeing this video. Because if she took out the policy, and it's not 100% clear here, but it's worth noting, without the knowledge of Mr. Owens and being there and approving the plan, then there's a HIPAA violation, potentially forgery that was done. Again, I'm not saying the lady did this, but it's something to consider because that's absolutely not supposed to happen. You as an adult, unless you have power of attorney or somebody has power of attorney over you, it could have happened here, but likely not. Then you are the only one responsible for taking plans out on yourself. And you have to physically sign them electronically, verbally, or written. And anybody else who does that is not a legitimate policy. It's not supposed to be. And could put the whole policy in jeopardy of paying out. And there may be an admission of guilt here unintentionally, interestingly enough. Let's continue.
Question. How old was your husband when he passed away?
68.
And what was the cause of his death?
Blood clots in his lungs.
Had he been treated for that before?
No, ma'am.
So he died suddenly.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been having difficulty getting answers from Lumico?
So most likely, again, what Judge Judy's saying here, he died suddenly of blood clots in the lungs. He hadn't been treated for it before. And that may be, by implication, what's causing the slowdown to this. Again, insurance companies within the first 2 years, as a rule by the state, are going to investigate this stuff because they're at risk of losing a lot of money, which puts the whole system in jeopardy. And that's a tough situation for them to be in, on top of the fact that people who have insurance, they want to make sure it pays out. So there's just this difficult position to be in the first years with any policy, Lumico or otherwise, if you've been fully approved. And there's really no way around it except to make sure that you answer all the questions honestly. You make sure that there's no room for error or confusion, and you make sure that what you have attested to be the truth really is. It's the best way to make sure to give yourself the best chances that you're fully covered from the first day, even when it's contested.
Yes, yes, ma'am, I have.
And the only thing that they say to you is still under review.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the person who I spoke to at Lumico said to me that they had the medical records.
So what are some takeaways from this Judge Judy clip on Lumico? First thing, as a burial insurance agent, make sure that you represent what you say with as much truth and certainty as much as possible. If you cut corners on your application, and I'm not saying this gentleman lied or did anything wrong, but if you don't fully represent the truth about your health, then you run the risk of a contestable claim not being paid. Now, I don't know if this did get paid or not, but the point being is that you got to make sure that you tell the truth to its fullest extent. The second thing is a lot of people are probably upset with this, and maybe even more upset after I've, in a sense, defended the company. All I can tell you is this: all insurance companies do this. This is not a Lumico thing. This is an insurance company right that the states give. And the thing to keep in mind, and it's the hardest thing to do, I know, in the midst of a tragedy like this, when this family needs the money, is that the reason this is put together is to protect all parties. It really is. Because if people took out insurance and there was no back checking to what the insured said was true, or if they just misrepresented something unintentionally, then you would see a total collapse of the insurance system, and then nobody would get insurance. And there's really not a great way around to make sure that everybody wins, with the exception that you as the insured have to make sure that you represent the truth as much as possible, as clearly as possible, so that you have the best chances of getting paid 100% within the first 2 years. Now, after the first 2 years of a fully protected policy, then there should be no delay. As long as the death certificate's returned to the company, you should have a pretty quick payout. This kind of claims process is not the norm if it's been longer than 2 years. I believe it has been in this case. And the point being is that what we're talking about here specifically, the issues at hand are really in those first 2 years. If you get feet dragging after the first 2 years, then get aggressive. Absolutely. Last thing I'll give you, if you're in the situation or you know a loved one that is, stay in contact with these people weekly. Be the squeaky wheel. Make sure that your concerns are heard, that you are getting your problems addressed, and that you're not sitting in the dark wondering what's going on, because that is a terrible thing. And because of the situation a lot of these insurance companies are in, they're understaffed. They've got way too much workload. They're under pressure. They are not in a position to, in many cases, as much as we'd like to see a timely conclusion to these claim requests. So you got to be that person that stays in front of them. So hope you enjoyed this video and this review. Hopefully gave you a little insight on the insurance business and kind of why this happened with Lumico and really with any insurance company for that matter, in my opinion. If you're interested in getting a free quote on life insurance, go to buylifeinsuranceforburial.com, or you can call us at 888-626-0439. Thank you.